welcome to another episode of Pint Glass Travels. As always, I'm Gary, and on this very special episode, we're going to be taking a trip to the historic city of York, England. While we're there, I'm going to be showing you some great pubs that you can drink at, as well as some historic sites that you can see along the way. So what are we waiting for? Let's head over. Our journey begins in Manchester, from which we'll jump on the Transpennine Express train through the rolling countryside of northern England to our destination in York. So, we're here in York, and whereas most people would probably go to their accommodations first, this is Pint Glass Productions, and that's not how we do things. The first stop on our trip is this awesome pub right here. York Tap is located in a building that used to be home to the York Model Train Museum. Anytime I take a trip to this city, it's my very first stop. It's homely and comfortable, with tired workers and excited travelers stopping in for a pint. The bar is stocked with several draft beers, but the real draw here is the 16 cask ales on hand at any time. What's cask ale? Well, I'm glad you asked. These are the working parts of a piece of equipment known as a beer engine, the beer delivery method for cask ale. Cask ales are served at cellar temperature, which is from about 52 to 55 degrees Fahrenheit. These beers can't hide behind the taste-deadening effects of colder temperatures, and any off flavors will become immediately apparent. Cask ales are my favorite variety of beer, but unfortunately, getting them in the States is damn near impossible. If you're looking for a great pint, though, watch out for this symbol. The cask mark is given to pubs by an independent organization that rates their beer, so if you see it, you're generally in for a good pint. Now, before we leave York Tap, I want to introduce you to my favorite beer in the whole world. This was the first cask ale that I ever tried, and it was described to me by a local gentleman as feeling like angels were dancing across your tongue, and I couldn't agree more. Ladies and gentlemen, this is Timothy Taylor's Landlord Ale. One of the great historic sights to see around York is Clifford's Tower, which is the ruined keep of York Castle, built by the Normans almost 9 centuries ago. The complex and the area were used as a prison until 1929. The view from the top is awesome, but admission is admittedly steep. But it's always free to just take a walk around. On our first trip to York, the sheer number of pubs seemed overwhelming. We've been told that there are 366 pubs within the walls of York, one for every day of the year, including leap year. We randomly chose the Golden Fleece as our first pub, and it claims to be the most haunted pub in York. Now, while we haven't seen any wandering specters, we have had some great steak and ale pies and cask ale. Now, it's become a tradition of sorts to grab a pint in the back bar of this nice little pub. There's also a great outdoor deck area in the rear. When you come, don't forget to grab a pint of Theakston's Old Peculiar, a dark ale with flavors of cherry, plum, and roasted malt. It's my wife's favorite, and I rate it a 5 out of 5. Cheers! The next stop on our pub crawl is a medieval ale house located on Stonegate called the House of Trembling Madness. The first floor is a bottle shop with a staggering amount of beer from across Europe. The pub is on the second floor, and it's a taxidermist's dream, with great beer and excellent food. While I was here, I took a chance on a New England IPA from Garage Brewing in Barcelona. Suffice it to say, it shocked me with how juicy and delicious it was. If you see this beer, buy it. So, we've traveled over 3,000 miles, and here is one of the highlights I've been looking forward to all trip. This is the Brew York tap room, and as a good friend of mine has said, let's go. The Brew York tap room is a great place to sip on a variety of over 40 beers. Brew York was only the second brewery to be built within the walls of York, and we'll talk about the first one later. The beer is delicious, and their Empress Tuncoco Imperial Stout was awarded the title of Best Wood-Aged Beer in the UK at the World Beer Awards of 2019. I decided to try a gooseberry sour called Goose Willis, which I awarded a 4.5 out of 5. As we continue our pub crawl, you'll notice that there's no shortage of interesting buildings and sights to see in York. But our next stop is at the Duke of York. The Duke of York is a pub that's owned by Leeds Brewery. The interior is really warm, with a nice roaring fire in the back, and it's a great place to stay on a rainy day. And, let's be honest, you're going to see a couple of rainy days when you're in York. This next pub is named for the final moments of the life of notorious highwayman Dick Turpin. The Last Drop Inn is owned and operated by York Brewery, which started in 1996. York was the first brewery to be built within the walls of York in a generation. The interior has an old-world charm and a good selection of gins. You know, if that's what you're into. Of all the great historic buildings around York, there's one that dominates the skyline like no other. York Minster is the symbol of the city, and one you have to make a point to see. Inside, you'll see the largest surviving example of medieval stained glass in all the world. Services are still held here, and if you'd like, all are welcome to observe the evensong. The Minster has survived countless wars, fires, and even had to be rescued from its own sinking foundations. It's no small miracle that this Gothic giant is still standing for all to enjoy. A museum in the Undercroft will explain the history of the area and some of the archaeological finds under the Minster. If you like to follow in the footsteps of some of history's most important and influential figures, you can stand in the very spot that Constantine was crowned Holy Roman Emperor, which is located just outside the Minster. Another can't-miss sight is the Shambles. Harry Potter fans, eat your heart out. This small, crooked street used to be home to the Butchers of York, and if you look closely at the buildings on either side, you can actually see the hooks that meatmongers used to hang their wares from. Souvenir shops, pie makers, and some cozy pubs lie on this street. By all means, a street like this will take you back in time, and it's something I think everyone should experience. Before we see a few more pubs, let's take a walk through the museum gardens. The museum gardens are home to the ruins of St. Mary's Abbey. Henry VIII destroyed this once sprawling abbey during the disillusionment, leaving nothing but a few walls. The gardens themselves are great to stroll through, and who knows, you might even find yourself looking at the logical conclusion to a hard day's pub crawl. We can't possibly cover every bar in York, so here are a few honorable mentions. Ye Old Star Inn, York's oldest licensed inn, and Valhalla, which is a great Viking-themed bar. Our final stop on this episode is going to be the Black Swan Inn. This pub also claims to be one of the most haunted in York, but we're not here for any paranormal experience. Besides being a pub that stocks both Timothy Taylor's Landlord and Theakston's Old Peculiar, it's also home to the best steak and ale pie in York. Served from 12 p.m. to 2:45, and then again from 5 p.m. to 7:45, the window is small, but the pie is absolutely worth it. If you don't believe me, feel free to check out beststeakandalepieinyork.com and see what's on top. That does it for this episode of Pint Glass Productions. I want to thank you for coming along for the trip and hope that this encourages you to get out into the world. If you like what you saw, don't forget to like and subscribe, and safe travels.